Welcome to the Balanced Badass Podcast, the show for multitaskers determined to stay balanced and badass without losing their minds. Every week, we help you manage your overflowing calendar and household, making sure you still have time to breathe, laugh, and savor that much-needed glass of wine at the end of the day. Think of this podcast as your weekly dose of practical advice, humor, and tough love, just like catching up with a friend who really gets it. I'm Tara Kermit, your personal growth coach, helping you handle how was your day without a meltdown. Now let's get into today's episode. Hey, welcome back to the Balanced Badass Podcast. If you're new here, thanks for popping on to listen. And if you're back for more, that's so freaking cool. So I want to jump right into things today. Overthinking. Man, it's a bitch, isn't it? You know exactly what I'm talking about. You're sitting there, minding your own business, and suddenly your brain's like, hey, remember that time like 5 years ago when you accidentally said I love you to your boss? Yeah, let's think about that for the next 2 hours. Like, true story. That happened to me several years ago, and I still replay that in my mind. And it always happens at the worst times, right? Like, you could be having a perfectly good day, and then your brain decides to rehash that awkward text you sent last week. Or you're out for a drive on a cool and sunny day. You've got the windows down, you're singing along to your favorite NSYNC song, and then bam. Suddenly, you're remembering that time in the 4th grade when you slipped and fell and cracked your head open at school. And now, instead of doing anything remotely useful, you're stuck in this endless loop of, why did I say that? What were they thinking? Should I have apologized or said something after? Look, I get it. Obviously, I'm no stranger to the overthinking spiral. I've spent way too many nights staring at the ceiling, picking apart some tiny moment from my day that honestly nobody else remembers. Things that seemed so insignificant in the moment become monumental catastrophes in my mind at 2 a.m. It's like my brain has a sick sense of humor or something. But you know what really blows my mind? I once asked my husband, Jay, what he thinks about when he's just sitting there, what he ruminates on or obsesses over in his mind. And he just looked at me and said nothing. Like, literally nothing. And I'm sitting here thinking, are you serious? As someone who has generalized anxiety disorder, I literally cannot comprehend that. The idea that someone's mind could be a quiet place with no running commentary, no internal debate over whether they should have said this or done that. For me, it's like trying to imagine a new color. Like, how? So I guess this overthinking thing, this constant mental chatter, isn't something everyone deals with. Some people are just wired differently. For some of us, it's like there's a never-ending monologue running in the background, narrating every little thing. While for others, it's just quiet, peaceful even. It's a whole different world. And that contrast makes it even more clear that this overthinking habit is not only draining, but also unnecessary. Because clearly, life goes on just fine, if not better, when you don't have that constant internal dialogue. But if you are like me and your brain is going 100 miles a minute every minute of the day, we're not alone in this. About 73% of adults overthink regularly. You heard that right. You, me, your best friend, even that super put together colleague you admire. Everyone's got their own shit going on in their heads. That cool, calm, collected friend you always envy, they're probably lying in bed, reliving some weird handshake hug situation they had with their ex the other day. We all think we're the only ones dealing with this internal mess, but it looks like we're just part of a weird club that no one really wants to be a part of. So today we're going to talk about, why do we do this to ourselves? What is it really costing us, and how to kick that nasty habit to the curb? And I want to start by telling you a little story about my brain and how it loves to fuck with me. So, a while back, I had this big talk coming up. It was nothing earth shattering, but important enough that I wanted to bring my A game. I did all the prep, slides were good, notes were set, and I was feeling ready. But then, about 2 days before, I felt that familiar knot in my stomach. You know the one. It's like your brain senses that you're feeling confident and decides to knock you down a peg or two. And this isn't a mild, like, oh, I'm a little nervous feeling. No, no, no. It's the full on, I'm about to jump out of a plane without a parachute kind of dread. Like, why is my brain doing this to me right now? So there I am, lying in bed, and the internal dialogue starts. What if you forget everything you're supposed to say? What if you stand up there and your mind just blanks? And then it spirals. What if they think you're a complete idiot? What if you bomb so hard they never invite you back? And on it goes until there's low hope of me getting any quality sleep. My brain has officially gone rogue. I've lost control. It's running all the scenarios and none of them are looking good. Then fast forward to the night before, and there I am again, awake, staring at that ceiling, playing out every possible disaster scenario. I was so up in my head that I even considered calling out sick just so I didn't have to go through with it. But I couldn't just bail on something that I was totally prepared for just because my brain was throwing a tantrum. So I dragged myself out of bed, practiced one more time in the mirror, and decided to put on my big girl panties and stick to my commitment. And guess what? The day came, I showed up, and none of that crazy nonsense happened. The talk went great. Nobody seemed to notice the tiny mistakes I made. No one booed. And hey, I didn't trip over my own feet. Not once did I blank out, and as far as I know, no one thought I was an idiot. All that worrying, all that energy spent on a bunch of crap that never came true. And that, my friend, is what overthinking does. It hijacks your brain, steals your time, and makes you feel like garbage for no good reason. And I wish I could say that that was the only time my brain pulled this crap, but it happens all the time for me. Before meetings, before calls. And as an introvert, it especially happens before social gatherings. But this is not just some quirk. It's actually a pattern driven by fear. Psychologists say overthinking is just another form of anxiety. And it doesn't just mess with your mind, it messes with your body too. Because chronic overthinking can lead to headaches, digestive issues, and even a weakened immune system, all of which I experience pretty regularly. Your mind can literally make you sick. Gross. So, why do we do this? Why do we let our brains run away with these little ridiculous stories? Because we're control freaks. I know it sounds harsh, but it's true. And somewhere in our heads, we think overthinking is helping us. Here's what I figured out. We overthink because we think it's somehow going to protect us. We think that if we just analyze everything to death, we can somehow prevent the worst from happening. We think if we just play out every possible scenario, we'll be ready. But the truth is, overthinking isn't going to protect you. It isn't control, and it's really just fear pretending to be helpful. And there's research that backs this up too. If nothing else comes from this podcast, you're learning that I love a good study. But I genuinely do hope you get more from this podcast than that, obviously. But I digress. Anyways, the folks at Cornell University found that 85% of the stuff we worry about never happens. Think about that for a second. 85%. So we're spending all this time stressing over things that are mostly made up in our heads. And hell, even for the 15% that does happen, most of us handle it just fine. In fact, the same study found that 79% of people said they were better off after the event than they had imagined. So we really are just making things worse for ourselves. And your brain friend is doing you dirty. It's keeping you stuck, worried about things that probably won't happen or won't matter in the long run. So let's call it for what it is. Overthinking is just a manifestation of fear. It's fear of failing, fear of looking stupid, fear of people judging you. It's like your brain is trying to protect you from these imaginary dangers by making you think about them constantly. And all it's really doing is creating more anxiety. But guess what? Most people are too busy worrying about their own shit to even notice yours. Seriously, nobody's watching you as closely as you think. And if they are, well, maybe they need a new hobby, and that's their issue, not yours. And that's the irony of it all. We're so wrapped up in our own heads, thinking everyone else is paying attention to our every move, when in reality, they're just as caught up in their own overthinking spirals. Now, let's talk about what overthinking is actually doing to you, because it's costing you more than you think. And we're going to start with time, because overthinking is like a time sucking black hole. All those hours you spent lying in bed, staring at that ceiling, replaying that dumb thing you said in a meeting 6 months ago that literally no one else remembers. Yeah, that's time you're never getting back. Time you could have spent doing literally anything else, having fun, being productive, relaxing, you name it. But instead, you're stuck in the endless mental loop going nowhere. And it's not just a one off thing. The average person has about 60,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of those are negative. That means you're likely having 48,000 negative thoughts every single day, which adds up to 336,000 negative thoughts a week and 17 million negative thoughts a year. Holy shit. That's a lot of mental noise going up in your head. I mean, just imagine if you had 17 million positive thoughts every year. Like, wow. The sheer volume of negativity we're dealing with is mind-boggling to me. I mean, it's no wonder we're all so exhausted. Because it's also costing you your energy. And I don't mean that in some vague, like, oh, I feel tired kind of way. I mean, it's draining you. Overthinking is exhausting. It burns through your energy like nothing else. You're running these mental marathons every day, and it's no wonder you feel tired and drained all the time. It's like you're carrying around a heavy backpack filled with bricks, but the bricks are the things that you're putting in there yourself. Every time you overthink, you're adding another brick, and soon enough, you're weighed down, wondering why everything feels so damn hard. And then you're stuck wondering why you feel so sluggish, why even the simplest tasks feel like a mountain to climb. You're literally draining yourself with every unnecessary thought, every what if, every self-imposed doubt. You wake up tired, you go to bed tired, and in between, you're tired because you're constantly running on empty. Why? Because you've wasted all your mental energy on a bunch of what ifs that aren't even real. 17 million what ifs. Just saying. I obviously can't get over that number. And let's talk about what this does to your confidence. Every time you overthink, you're sending yourself a message that you don't trust yourself, that you have to be perfect. You're telling your brain that you're not good enough, not ready, not capable. And if you do that enough, you start to believe it. You start to doubt yourself, doubt your choices. And before you know it, you're paralyzed, afraid to make any kind of move. Meanwhile, life is happening all around you, and you're stuck on the sidelines, missing out. Opportunities are passing you by, and you're too caught up in your head to even notice. While you're busy thinking about whether you're good enough, or if it's the right time, or if you're qualified, someone else is already out there saying yes, taking the shot, doing the thing. They're not smarter than you. They're not better than you. They're just not overthinking. They're not waiting for the perfect moment. They're just going for it. And you're still sitting there waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. The truth is, most of the time, you're the only one holding yourself back. Everyone else, they're already betting on you, but you're still standing on the sidelines, overthinking every damn thing. Even big names, people we think have their shit together, deal with this crap. Y'all, Oprah. Yes, the Oprah has admitted to overthinking. She's talked about how she sometimes finds herself stuck in that loop too. But she also talks about how she doesn't stay there. She recognizes it and keeps going anyway. And y'all, if Oprah can struggle with it and still show up like a badass, then so can you. So, how do we stop this madness? How do we put an end to the overthinking that's holding us back? Well, it starts with catching yourself when you start spiraling. Notice when your thoughts are starting to run away from you and say to yourself, "Hey, self, you're overthinking again." Don't judge it, just acknowledge it. Awareness is the first step to changing anything because you can't change what you don't see. And I know it sounds silly to say it out loud, but seriously, you gotta call it out. Because when you name it, you take some of its power away. It's like shining a flashlight on the monster under your bed. Suddenly, it's not so scary anymore. Then you gotta do something. Anything that gets you out of your head and back into your body. You need to get up and move. I'm serious. Overthinking loves it when you're sitting still, when you're staring at your phone, when you're lying in bed, whatever. So get up and move your body. I don't care if it's 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. Go for a walk, stretch, dance around your kitchen like a fool. Just move. Because physical activity is one of the quickest ways to interrupt those overthinking cycles. It gives you a fresh perspective, even if it's just for a minute. And here's another trick that sounds weird, but I swear it works. Set a worry timer. Literally set a timer on your phone for about 10 minutes and let yourself obsess, stress, and think about all the dumb things. Worry your little heart out, friend. But when that timer goes off, you're done. Move on. You've had your little worry fest, and now it's time to get back to living. Then, if you're still stuck, play out the worst case scenario. Really go there. Play it all the way out. What if it all goes to hell? What if you do screw up? What's the absolute worst thing that could happen? 9 times out of 10, it's not as bad as you think, and even if it is, at least you know what you're dealing with. You can stop being afraid of it and start planning for it. You can face it head on instead of letting it just loom over you like a dark cloud. But honestly, the best way to stop overthinking? Do something. Just take some action. Don't sit there waiting for the perfect plan or the perfect moment, because that moment ain't coming. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to feel completely ready. Start messy. Start scared. Just start. The rest will follow. Make the call. Send the email. Start the project. Just do something, because the longer you sit and think, the harder it gets. Overthinking dies when you start doing. The minute you move, that little voice in your head gets a hell of a lot quieter. You're proving to yourself that you're capable, that you can handle whatever comes up. And the more you do that, the less room there is for overthinking to run the show. Here's the deal. Overthinking is not serving you. It's not making you better, and it's definitely not keeping you safe. If anything, it's just holding you back. Overthinking is like giving that scared little voice in your head way too much power, and it doesn't deserve it. You've got better things to do, bigger goals to chase, and quite honestly, you don't have time for this crap. So the next time you catch yourself spiraling, remember that you're the boss here, not your thoughts. You don't need to have all the answers or know exactly how things will turn out. Just trust yourself and take that next step. But I do also want to be clear here. If you're dealing with anxiety or constant overthinking that feels like it's out of your control, There is no shame in getting some help. I'm a huge proponent of seeing a therapist. A lot of this stuff isn't just about willpower or thinking positive. Sometimes you do need a little extra support from someone who knows what they're doing. A therapist, a counselor, a qualified professional who can give you the tools to manage it better. Because you don't have to go through this alone, and there's nothing weak or weird about getting help. In fact, it's one of the strongest things you can do. Because for some of us, overthinking isn't just a bad habit, it's a symptom of something deeper like anxiety or trauma, and that's okay. It just means that there are more layers to work through, and you don't have to do it by yourself. So if you feel like you're drowning in your thoughts and can't seem to come up for air, please reach out to someone who can help guide you through it. Because trust me, it makes all the difference. And hey, if this episode hit home for you, share it with someone who's probably overthinking right now. Now, stay tuned for next week because we're getting into how to actually reframe your mindset and build real confidence. Forget faking it till you make it. We're going to get into how to actually change the way you think about yourself so you can finally stop second guessing and start owning your badassery. But until then, stay balanced, stay badass, and for the love of all things holy and good, tell that overthinking voice in your head to shut the hell up. Thanks for hanging out with me on the Balanced Badass podcast. I hope today's episode brought you a little more balance and a lot more badass in your day. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, and leave a review. Your support helps more multitaskers like you find the show, and I'd really appreciate it. Until next time, take care of yourself and make good choices, friend. I'll catch you next week.